What up, guys? What's going on, Shakia? What a day. I I just gotta say, I can't find the Bears right now. I just want to know where the Bears are at because this market literally just will not die. Also, kind of, if you see on my screen right now, I did pull up AMAT. They do have earnings that's gonna likely end up kind of coinciding with how the semis are likely gonna end up. Maybe seeing some kind of sympathy move off of this right now. It is up about $2 right now. We'll see if that actually sticks, if that holds. Likely that conference call is gonna give us a little bit more of a telling story for guidance is like gonna end up mattering. So that's gonna be something I'll pay attention to. So going into tomorrow, but that's gonna be something as well. Of course, I want to see if it ends up fading by the end of their conference call. Here and after hours within the next, I want to say, few minutes to an hour, and we'll see if that ends up holding up. But what a strong day, and I think that was more so the telling story today, right? So if I can just give you the backdrop of what I was kind of just noticing, in which case, everyone coming into today, it's likely that you ended up feeling like the market was going to drop. We were likely already kind of getting that exhaustion feeling, and we were supposed to get the drop today. And I think, Avery was pretty much looking for that earlier on this morning. It was not necessarily working out like that. We had a nice little wedge. We were kind of just bouncing left and right. We saw the little explosive-ish move that we had right in towards power hour. That was a beautiful little leg up before the end of the day profit taking that we had. But what I actually noticed from the get go was pretty much how semis were looking. That was what caught my attention. We already saw energy pushing for most of the morning. We know how energy pretty much does, while the rest of tech is not necessarily doing as great. We still had some relative strength in certain names outside of the semis as well. We saw the day that maybe Netflix was having, you could point to. You can also see pretty much Apple, of course, was just giving us that strength right off the bat. And then so looking at semis though, that was the bigger picture. I saw Nvidia, saw AMD, saw AMAT, saw Micron, Intel, all those good names, pretty much all showing that relative strength. And until that ended up showing me weakness, looking at generally the SMH that has all of those pretty much included. Looking at SMH, I didn't see any kind of relative weakness that said that we were going to necessarily die today. And that's basically why we kept afloat for most of, if not all, the day, you want to say. All right. So that was pretty much what caught my attention earlier on. For the most part, we saw the Russell pushing. We heard Dapper talking about the Russell just continuing to grind with us. That was a good sign. And so that was basically the gist of what kind of caught my attention. Now, looking into ES as I'm about to switch over, we see AMAT's trying to creep up here, up about 3%. Would not surprise me if it actually gets a little bit higher though. Real quick before I actually get out of it, just to give you some levels that I was watching. If she does end up holding, I have her pushing up towards 113.17. And above that, I have it going up towards 117.36, depending on if we can get some solid continuation. So, granted, this ends up holding, that's the bigger matter to pretty much deal with. Otherwise, if we end up fading this in a little after hours push, then it's likely that we start to see this fade with the broader market in due time, that is. And we're going to take this right back down towards 104.67, which is my relative support, before it ends up breaking down even further. All right, so that's pretty much AMAT. Before I switch over, let's actually take a peep at ES real quick, kind of give you just what I'm looking at. Basically, you can see here off the daily, you have a beautiful little descending broadening wedge type of action here. We pretty much see that we basically held my level here from this, yeah, I want to say from this little anchored view up I have off of the explosion of the 10th. We saw us continuing to pretty much just push off of that anchored view up. That's sitting at that 42.56 level, and that's exactly what we just continue to grind off of all day for that matter. So I'm gonna look for that to support here tomorrow. Is that 42.56 level? I think that's kind of just the range that we're sitting in between the high that we've already put in. That's from basically 2 days ago of that 43.27, and then down to this 42.56. I think that's a little bit of a box that we're sitting in right now, in which, if I'm being honest with you, I think we could still chill within that area basically between 42.56 and 42.30, 43.80. That's the area I think we still have a little bit more wiggle room if we were to relatively just stay within maybe another little range here going into concluding the week. All right, so that's pretty much the range. Otherwise, if we end up breaking the support I'm watching 42.56, that's when things really start to roll over. We're really going to start to see the bleeding as the Bears continue to just press into this little elevation that we're continuing to stay high. If we end up breaking 42.56, then I'm watching 42.08, and below that, then we have 40.11.16 is the immediate levels that I'm particularly watching. All right. So otherwise, again, the box is more so what concerns me. The 43.80 at the high end, and then also the 42.56 on the low end. That's the box that concerns me. I need to see us either break north or south of that box to really give me a more of a directional move than really just trying to feed into what the Bears are doing and just pretty much accumulating puts as we continue to stay so high up. All right. So that's pretty much looking at feuds. Outside of that, I don't know if anyone saw in the Discord. I did take a little bit of a lotto. I haven't taken a lotto necessarily in quite a few days, but I did take a lotto on Tesla here going into tomorrow. This could go either way. I mean, honestly, if the market does roll over tomorrow, obviously that's why it's considered a lotto. It's not necessarily a full size position of any sort. But I did take a 925 call spread. It's on 925. The other leg is 945. So I basically bought the 925 call. I sold the 945 call going into tomorrow. And so if we see any kind of relative push off of this, I actually have supply that stretches up towards 952 is what I'm watching. We already saw the past few days, I want to say mostly the entire week so far, that we've had relative volume going out towards that 950 area. I think they've all been hitting the 950 strike. So it would not surprise me if this ends up popping, kind of just feeding into the fact that we saw relative strength amongst other names in the tech sector. It would not surprise me if Tesla ends up trying to seeing a strong gap up, and they show some early on relative strength before we start to see any kind of relative decline going into tomorrow. All right, so that's what I'm gonna look for. Maybe we see relative weakness in the rest of tech, but Tesla is holding on and pretty much holding us afloat for most of the morning until we see the broader market drag down. That's kind of what I'm looking at as well. But just looking at levels, we held basically at nine. That was that 900 level, which was more so that mental level. We saw pretty much Bears attacking that 900 put strike just relentlessly, and they still can't take it under 900. Today felt like it would have been that day in which we would have ended up breaking down under 900 today into that close. But the fact that we're still, afloat above that 900 level, it tells me that we're not ready to crack that 900 level just yet. It's likely that we're gonna see a pop, then we'll end up seeing a massive decline that's gonna take us below that 900 for whatever given reason tomorrow. All right. So as long as we hold 900, that's the support level. Otherwise, break down below the 900. I'm watching 892.16, and if things really do get disgustingly ugly, then I would expect 851.67. The other thing to consider, and those of you that kind of remember me and Avery, like talking about Tesla constantly, there's been a magnet level for this. Once it ends up breaking 800, and I mentioned that 892 level, the magnet has been 886. That's really the magnet level. So if we crack that 892, I would not be surprised if we overshoot to the 886. But then waterfall wise, you crack 886, then you're looking at 851.67. All right. So I'll keep an eye on that one. We'll see how this ends up performing. That lotto I think costs like 250. If it ends up doubling, I mean, I think that's pretty much easy money. Otherwise, depending upon how we look tomorrow morning, maybe if we do get a gap down, then I'll likely know to pretty much cut my loss, whatever it is given by market open. All right. So that's that. Outside of that, again, I said keep an eye on pretty much your semis. Nvidia, some beautiful strength earlier on today. I got to give it to Nvidia. That actually was the first one that kind of showed that relative strength, and it held above my breakdown level, above that 180.43. We saw basically that strong push, actually, considering that it held above 182 given, and we saw the beautiful push. You heard me and Tom kind of talking about that earlier on. We were watching that 187 resistance. We kind of overshot that, got up towards 188 half, and so we are still pretty much staying elevated here as pretty much AMAT is staying still relatively green. It is possible that we could see a little bit more continuation alongside Tesla tomorrow morning, as I would pretty much know my thought process is. Right now, we could see this likely shoot up towards 191. Otherwise, if we can't get continuation over today's high, over that 188 half, then it's likely we end up starting to see this roll back over. Support was pretty much sitting at this 185, and then below 185, then you're going to start to see this decline towards that 180.43 mark that I have as my support. All right, so that's another one. I'll keep an eye on that one. Outside of that one, let's see what else there is to keep an eye on. Microsoft, we saw that one. That was another one I was watching. I actually expected this one to roll over earlier on as we were kind of looking for that market decline out the gate at the open. That was not the case. It's still holding up relatively well, but I am going to watch for the rollover here under not 288.32. That's going to be the breakdown spot for me, and then we can start to see this trade down towards 282.79 is my support. Is what I'm watching, which is roughly what, that's like a $6 move to the downside, more or less. So I'll keep an eye on that one as well. All right. So that's pretty much just some names that I was keeping an eye on. Krishna, let me take a look at some of the names that you mentioned, and wow, you got a few names. All right, so you got Roku. Let's take a peep at Roku first. See what's going on with Roku. Roku, I'm not gonna lie, I think it's dead. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't see anything here that tells me I want to be a part of this. Now, obviously, the first thing that's notable, pretty much off of the daily here, is that you have a well-defined downtrend break. So nothing there pretty much tells me that I want to be in this particularly, unless you get a convincing break out of this downtrend. But if you want to pretty much play your retracements here, I think you can get maybe the 50% retracement off of this little pullback from the lows that you have from July 29th. I would look for 75 half to look to be your support at that 50% retracement and see if you can get a strong snapback out of that 75 half. Otherwise, next level you're looking at from maybe like a possible 1-2 situation to be would be looking at 72.43, which is basically 72 half is what you're looking at. So 75 half, 72 half, those are your levels to the downside here you're looking at for any kind of meaningful reversal. Otherwise, you crack 72 half, I don't think there's much holding this up, and you're likely going to end up coming back to test these lows from that July 29th. All right. Otherwise, again, breakout level that I'm looking at for the north side, in which it's going to be more so the daily breakout. I need to see this back over $90. That'll be the bigger move in terms of the daily chart. But if you're just looking for a quick buck, I will look for that 75 half reversal. If you don't get that, 72 half will be the next spot. All right. So that would be Roku. Outside of that, you also mentioned AMD, another semi name. You could pretty much see again it's elevated off of the back end of AMAT's earnings. You've been bouncing off of the support at that 96.77 level. You saw the strong little push that you got out of that. Now you could also make the fact that it's making a little bit of a wedge action here off of this daily. Now I would look for the breakout here over 102 here. That's particularly my breakout level. Otherwise, I think that's going to be your overhead supply right now is that 102 mark, and then you should pretty much get right back down. And I would not be surprised that you end up smacking your head right back at the support at this 96.77 level. So overhead supply again is that 102 mark. That's what I would say is your overhead supply. You break through that, then you see the bigger breakthrough, and you're going to break north of 104. But again, if that can't hold above that 102 level as your resistance, then that brings you right back down to this 96 level. Below the 96, then you're watching this to get a full-on breakdown towards 93. All right. Outside of that, you were talking about some memes, which I'm not gonna lie, I have not necessarily looked at a lot of these memes names. In particular, I know that Tom pretty much hit it pretty big with Weber today. That was a hell of a monster. I don't know how many people followed into that. I think he was up like 1,500% or some shit like that. But that was a hell of a move that he ended up getting out of that. In terms of support that I'm watching here for BBBY, I'm watching the support here sitting right at this 15 half level. That's the level that I'm particularly watching. If I kind of just draw the line here to show you exactly why I have that mark at that 15 half, you pretty much identified that that was basically the level that you chopped for quite some time, dating back between most of all of December of last year, and then up until February of this year. So you can pretty much see that you've teetered that 15 half level as support or resistance before you got the push. That's dating back towards the beginning of March. And then you got the full on breakdown dating back towards the end of April. So I would look for that 15 half to hold. That would be the level where I would say you maybe nibble at BBBY for maybe a reversal here. But that 15 half, that's the level. You nibble at it, see if you get a pretty much a reversal. You get a starter entry per se. Then you look for the breakout to happen back over that $18 mark. So 15 half is your entry point. You look for the full on breakout back over $18 to take it back up. Otherwise, if you can't hold 15 half, then this is going to trade right back down towards $12 pretty quickly, and that's where it's going to get disgusting. All right, and that entire squeeze would have been just basically a pump and dump. All right. So that's what I would say about BBBY. Your other one was AMC. If I recall, I think Tom said that he looked at this one yesterday. You had the little break of the downtrend here. You can see you had the little push over that 23 mark. You were not able to basically sustain any kind of further momentum. You topped out at that 27 half, and now you're right back below into that downtrend break that you had previously. So level I would be watching on for this one would be right around this 18.5. That's another one that I'd be watching for. If you're looking to nibble on it, 18.5 is the mark. You look to see if you can get right back above the downtrend break over that $21 mark. Otherwise, you fade that $18 mark. If you can't hold, then this is gonna come right back down, and this is gonna trade down towards 14.5 pretty darn quickly. All right. So that's what I would particularly look at. I don't think there's anything here that I say there's a full-on reversal that's convincing me. But if you can get the push right off of that 18.5, I think that's where you nibble at it and look for this to break right back over 21. All right. So there you go. V. Goddamn, that's a hell of a lot of tickets you just pumped out there. Let's see. EMPH. That is a tight wedge that you have going on in EMPH here. I know that someone had me look at this not too long ago. It's quite the wedge if I just draw this out for you right now. And in which case, you could potentially see this continuing to wedge going into tomorrow. There's nothing that says it's going to break out just yet. So I wouldn't force the situation to happen just yet. If I'm being completely honest, I wouldn't necessarily wait for the breakout over 305. Over that 305 mark, that's going to be the overshoot in which I would say you go long. If you can, depending upon pretty much the spread, I would likely go out towards 330 calls that'll put you into the downtrend, this uptrend resistance at 333. But overall, you need to break over 305. Otherwise, you're stuck in this wedge that looking at it from, what is this, the beginning of August here already? I think you can continue to wedge between this range here below 300 towards that 290. That's a $10 range that you're likely going to get stuck in for the next few days unless you break north or south. So over 305, you go long. Under this level, under 284, that's when you go short and you're likely looking at gap fill there under this 264 mark. All right. So it's a hell of a pennant. If you have any kind of lesson from what Avery went through today, he was pretty much on the wedge. I believe it was JKS. You never know if a wedge is going to break north or south. That's the problem right now trying to get an early entry. I think he got a little bit of an early entry and then it went south on him. That's the problem when you have these pennants and you have these strong wedges after a full on impulse up. And you could obviously see the full impulse up you have with what, two gaps sitting here. And then now you wanted to wait to see if it's going to break north or break south. So that early entry may end up costing you if you do it too early. All right. So that's the MPH. The other one you mentioned, I already went through Tesla. I said that I pretty much took a call auto on it. Big picture here, you're looking to hold 900. You can't hold 900, you trade down to 892 and then 886. Otherwise, you hold that 900 by morning, and I have overhead supply sitting at the 952 mark, which a lot of those 950 calls that have been pretty much hitting for the past few days, past what 2 weeks matter, that will likely end up being paying towards that supply that I have sitting at that 952 mark. All right. So that's just pretty much just giving you the key levels there. And then the other one you mentioned was coin. That's a hell of a little wedge that coin has going on. I did not realize that. That's quite the wedge. Just looking at this, yeah, you could say it's a nice little falling wedge type of action here, sitting on coin, particularly. I would say that I would kind of wait on this one. It's not a wedge that I want to necessarily say that I want to catch because this falling wedge could get even steeper. If I'm looking for main support here, it's likely going to be sitting right around this 78 level, which is about a $5 move to the downside on coin. So 78 would be the level where I would say you try to buy off of support. Is that 78 level? I wouldn't just pick it up right in the middle of this falling wedge. 78 is that level. You try to buy it off support. Obviously, you're having a stop loss. If 78 can't hold, I think your stop loss is sitting right around the 75 mark, which is about a $3 move to the downside. So again, that's just having playing it level by level. Your entries at 78 can't hold 75. That should be your stop out. Otherwise, if you're looking for the break of the downtrend here off of this falling wedge, if you do get a meaningful reversal, you're looking for the break right back over this 86 mark, and that'll be where you potentially look to go long. All right. So over 86, that's the mark where you look to go long. Otherwise, you're looking for your entry here at support at 78, where your stop out at 75. All right. So that's a few names that I kind of went through. Let's see if AMAT's kind of holding up here still. So it's still relatively flat. I don't think there's anything here that's convincing to say that you're likely going to get continuation necessarily, but you still have that overhead resistance, so you could easily trade to my first PT that's sitting at that 113.16 mark here by morning, and more than likely it's going to come on the back end of some analyst ratings more so. But so I'll look for that 113.16 level again. If we can somehow sustain over 113.16, we break that first PT and we get some momentum building, that's when you're going to see the $14.5 move to the upside up towards my second PT at 117.35. All right, so I would definitely keep an eye on this one, and especially if the market stays elevated tomorrow and we continue to stay in this range, like I said, I can definitely see AMAT trying to get build some momentum, and we could see this trade up towards 117. All right. Other than that, though, I went through quite a few tickers pretty quickly there, within that few minutes. So I will leave it as is there. Let's see what the market gives us. Today was a hell of a way to pretty much hold the bulls up here. I know that bears are pressing. The only thing is that trying to get in too early into those shorts, it is costly. Like if you saw today, that was just a slow bleed up. That was definitely just literally just detrimental to anyone that got into puts way too early. So that's pretty much the part there. That's why I say wait for your levels to crack before you try to force the situation. And as you see, it would have been very costly today. All right. So let's see what tomorrow brings us. Let's hope that it's a good Lotto Friday, that we're not necessarily stuck within a range, and then premiums just get chopped up, kind of how it felt like today. All right. But other than that, I will leave it as is. Again, appreciate you guys always joining as usual. You guys all have a great evening, and I will see you guys for Lotto Friday tomorrow morning. Have a good one, guys.